Hello, everyone. Good morning, good afternoon, and good evening to all participants joining us from across the Sofia Hajiani, and it's my pleasure to welcome you today to our webinar with the title Empowering Educators, Advancing Literacy. This webinar has been organized by UNESCO Institute for Lifelong Learning in collaboration with the section of Youth, Literacy, and Skills Development at UNESCO HQ, and the Asia South Pacific Association for Basic and Adult Education, ASPBAE, which is one of the 17 associate members of the Global Alliance for Literacy. This webinar is organized within the framework of the Global Alliance for Literacy, and it is the third for this year. So we started in April with the webinar on women's literacy. We continued with the webinar on financial literacy in July. And today we turn our attention to literacy educators, on the topic of this very important topic on literacy educators. Before we start, I would like to provide some housekeeping information for this webinar. So simultaneous interpretation is available in English and French. You can select the language of your preference by just clicking the globe button at the bottom of your screen. During webinar, several information will be shared on the chat regarding resources, projects, but also information about our speakers. So feel free to use the Q&A box then also to share any comments or questions you may have. And if you have any questions to a specific speaker, please mention the name of the speaker so that they can respond to your question in writing. We'll be doing also the same and reply to your questions whenever we can. And after the presentations, we will have a Q&A session if we have enough time for that. And also, please be aware that this webinar is being recorded. So going back a bit to the topic, why did we choose this topic for our webinar today? Literacy educators play a key role in providing quality education, and their role is central to ensuring effective literacy and teaching and learning. But their work goes beyond that. Their work extends beyond teaching basic literacy and numeracy skills. Literacy educators foster lifelong learning, they empower individuals and communities and drive. Despite though the importance of their role, globally, literacy educators face persistent challenges. They are among the lowest paid education workers, often have insufficient training and limited access to professional development, and frequently work under precarious conditions with very little recognition or institutional support. And very often they don't get the proper attention also at the policy level. We should not forget also that the COVID-19 pandemic and rapid digital transformation have further exposed and exacerbated these challenges. Recognizing these realities, UNESCO and UIL and its partners have prioritized quite a lot the capacity building and technical support to countries to strengthen the skills of this target group of literacy and adult educators, and specifically the digital skills, and also to support systems and the professionalization of literacy educators. Some examples of this work is the very well-known Curriculum Globale, which is a core curriculum for training adult educators worldwide, and you will hear more about that by one of our presenters later on in the agenda. Then you must have heard also a lot about UIL's initiative regarding the training on digital skills of literacy educators. This initiative has been running the last 3 years and has been adopted and implemented in 5 countries so far: Egypt, Nigeria, Cote d'Ivoire, Bangladesh, and at the moment is being contextualized and implemented in Morocco. And most importantly, very recently, building on this initiative, UIL has developed and launched a digital competency framework for adult educators, which is called Delta Framework, Delta Competency Framework, and you can find more information on that and the respective training modules on the chat. Now, before we move to the main session, we'll do an activity. We will do an interactive poll to gather your perspectives on this important topic. And after this poll, we'll go to the main session, which will be moderated by another colleague. So now, if you allow me, I will ask my colleague to open the poll, and you will see on your screen some questions in English and French. So take your time. An answer that fits you the best. So you can scroll down the screen and you can see all 5 questions. We will leave you some time from 2 to 3 minutes to read through and respond to these questions, and we will see the results on our screen soon. We still have a couple of minutes. I see some participants saying that they can't see the poll, but I see a lot of replies. So maybe it's something on your computer settings or if you're connected via phone. But I think we can slowly close and see some results already. For those who could not reply, you could just share your thoughts on your Q&A section. So let's go to the first question. If you could give literacy educators one superpower to help their work, which would you choose? And I see that most of the people replied adapting to diverse needs. That's very important to be flexible and also adaptable to the specificities of each context. That's very obvious, I see from your answers. Then the next question, what's the first word that comes to mind when you hear adult literacy educator? What kind of characteristics you would give? What kind of features, what kind of first thoughts come to your mind? I see big difference. Most of you replied change maker. And then I see 21% as an advocate. You see him as an advocate, and fewer people replied as a knowledge transmitter. Going to the third question, what face in your context? I know that our audience comes from diverse backgrounds, so I guess that the replies are also diverse. So most of you replied that low pay or recognition is the first, the most important challenge. Then insufficient resources, which means, I guess, teaching materials, infrastructure, and other resources that could help the literacy educator to work properly, and limited professional development. We will hear a lot about that in our webinar today. Going quickly to the fourth question, what would motivate you most to participate in a capacity building program for literacy educators? I guess that those that responded are coming from this area, or maybe are literacy educators themselves addressing specific teaching and learning challenges. Most of you replied, 40%, and then learning new teaching strategies and instructional methods. And I will conclude the results with the fifth question. If your community, which means in your context, if your organization or institution could do one thing to support literacy educators, what should it be? Most of you, we have two questions, 25%, provide more resources and advocate for better pay and working conditions. And 30%, I'm sorry, that was the highest one, offer regular training and support. But again, we come to the necessity to capacitate, to provide a capacity building to this target group, which is very important for them to provide quality education. So thank you for participating in this poll. We got nice views and your perspective for this topic. We'll discuss most of these points today. We'll hear a lot from our speakers coming from several countries, either Gulf countries and non-Gulf countries. We will hear from Mozambique, from Senegal, from Brazil, and from Bangladesh. And we're very from you and to go into the discussion. So now I will give the floor to my colleague Mari Yasunaga, Program Specialist from UNESCO HQ, to start the session and moderate the discussion. Mari, the floor is yours.
Thank you very much, Sophia. Hello, everybody. My name is Mari Yasunaga. I work at the UNESCO Headquarters in the literacy team. And it's really my great pleasure to moderate this session on empowering educators to advocate advanced literacy, policy, practice, and research. Today, as Sophia mentioned, 4 distinguished presenters are with us. From Africa, we have a team of DBV International, a German adult education association which promotes lifelong learning in more than 30 countries. So Mr. Johan Heilman, Regional Director of Southern Africa, and Mr. Jose Mukawa, Country Director in Mozambique. From Senegal, we have the privilege of having Mr. Alio Fall, Director of the Directorate of Literacy and National Languages, Ministry of Education. So Mr. Fall worked also for many years as a French teacher. From Bangladesh, let us welcome Mr. Prafola Barman, Senior Advisor, BRAC Education Program. BRAC is an NGO which promotes basic education for marginalized children and youth across Asia and Africa. Last but not least, we have Mr. Timothy Diniz Island from Brazil. He's Professor Emeritus of Adult Education and is also coordinator of the UNESCO Chair in Youth and Adult Education at Federal University of Paraíba. With these presenters who have extensive experiences in adult literacy, learning, and education, we will explore how adult literacy educators can be empowered and supported more effectively to enhance the quality and impact of literacy provision, and therefore to contribute to the achievement of the Sustainable Development Goal 4 on education and lifelong learning, and the mission of the Global Alliance for Literacy within the framework of lifelong learning, so-called GAL. So as you know, this webinar is part of the series of the GAL webinar, as Sophia mentioned, and which fosters dialogue, knowledge sharing, and among literacy stakeholders specific topics. So how this session today is structured. So it will start with the 4 presentations. So let me remind the presenters here that each of you will have 10 minutes for your intervention. So I really appreciate that if you could keep this time. And then, of course, depending on the time left, the floor will be open for discussion. While speakers are presenting, the participants are invited to post your questions in the Q&A box some of you are already sort of addressing issues. And then those questions will be answered by the presenters and UNESCO staff as much as possible. And let me thank to the presenters in advance for paying also the attention to the Q&A box and then responding to the questions addressed to you as much as possible during this webinar. It's not easy to do both presenting but also responding, but that we really appreciate it. Now, let me invite the first speaker, Mr. Joan Eilman and Mr. Jose Macupa from DBV International, who will speak about Curriculum Global, a common reference framework for adult learning programs and suggested standard of competencies for adult educators. So from framework to practice, lessons from Mozambique, literacy educator training. So floor is yours.
Thank you very much, Mari. Thank you very much, Sophia and colleagues from the UIL, from UNESCO. Thanks so much for the invite to be with you. Greetings from Mozambique. As Mari said, I'm together here with my colleague Jose Mukwapa. My name is Johan Heilmann. I'm the Regional Director for DVV International for Southern Africa. I myself am based in Lilongwe in Malawi, but currently we are together in Mozambique and Maputo, where we are also implementing projects. We will now share our screen with you for our presentation. Hope that all works smoothly, just like we had it in our practice session. Here we go. I take it that you can all see our screen. And yeah, actually, we will go much beyond the Curriculum Globale. We will also present you with a concrete example of how we approach the education of adult literacy instructors. But just to jump into the topic, I just want to share the background of DVV International with you, and then of the Curriculum Globale, which was already mentioned by Sophia. So for those of you who don't know DVV International, it's the Institute for International Cooperation of the German Adult Education Association. For more than 50 years, actually, we are trying in different countries at the moment in just more than 30 countries with more than 200 partners. Our main aim is to establish and expand sustainable structures for youth and adult education. We also do a lot of lobby and advocacy work for adult learning and education, short ALE, on the international level through diverse channels. And we also advise governments and civil society organizations, grassroots organizations in project work through professional exchanges via conferences and publications. We work with a three-level approach in all the countries where we work. We have the macro level, which is the first level where we work mostly with governments, very often with the ministries for education, where we try to prepare frameworks for in a sustainable way, where we look at legal frameworks for lifelong learning and adult education, where we do advocacy work to try to increase the allocation of resources to adult education, and where we generally try to support on a national level adult learning and education. For this lobby and advocacy work, we also try to use examples from our micro-level work, where we have concrete projects, for example, in community learning centers, where in a very concrete manner we support our main target groups, usually disadvantaged people, marginalized people, people in rural areas, where we try to show what is actually possible with relatively little input, what output can we have for our target groups, for our beneficiaries. And we then try to make use of this at a macro level as well, to say, well, this is a possibility for expansion also on a national level. And then in between micro and macro level, we have the meso level, where we support organizations, institutions that provide adult education, strengthen them as an organization. We also strengthen individuals. That is the aspect we will look at mostly now. And then, of course, we also try to develop various materials, curricular programs, a lot of innovation materials that might benefit adult education in the respective countries. Just as an overview on this map, You see where we are working. So basically it's Latin America, Africa, the Middle East, and Asian countries. It's not quite up to date. I can see that Algeria is missing, Cote d'Ivoire is missing, and also Sri Lanka is missing on this map, but just to have an idea where we are working at the moment. And now just more concretely, the curriculum globale, it's a curriculum, a competency-based curriculum, which we use for adult educators, which has also been adopted by the UNESCO Institute for Lifelong Learning and others, which was developed in collaboration also with the German Institute for Adult Education, and which is meant as a universal usable curriculum for the education of adult educators all over the world. Of course, it always has to be adopted to the local context. It's by now been interpreted into many different languages. It's competency-based, so we define competences in that curriculum. It's oriented towards action. It's got a very participatory approach, and it's also aimed at sustainability by not only providing for theoretic input, but it's there are supposed to be a lot of practical exercises and then also phases where people can further try out on their job what they actually learned during the sessions for the curriculum globale. There are some common core and variable elements. Of course, there was always the question, is that an undertaking which is possible at all or not, to have something that's applicable really in all the countries where we work. So far, we have made a lot of positive experiences. And if I say so far, I'm talking more or less about the past decade, actually. There is a core of fundamentals and principles that are globally relevant and that are adopted to the local context, but still that can be used more or less worldwide. As there are global commonalities, the task of supporting adult learning processes, the task of promoting the emancipation and self-determination of adult learners, and the recognition of adult learners as responsible individuals who have a significant say in their own learning process. And of course, we don't have the time now to go into detail with the curriculum globale into the different modules. This we can do in some other time, or if there are questions, you can also ask them in the chat. But we definitely want to have time now to also look into our concrete approaches in Mozambique, which is a country where we've been working for more than 15 years now, and where we have made good experiences in terms of alphabetization, literacy. But José will be able to talk more about this. From my side, I say thank you very much, and I'm looking forward to further questions and discussion later on.
Well, thank you very much, Jon. Thank you very much, everyone. Good afternoon. I'm José Mkwapa, Director of DVB International in Mozambique. Our presentation structure is supported by literacy education, core competence of literacy educators, training framework, methodologies and approaches, challenges and opportunities, and also last conclusion. The importance of literacy educators for us in Mozambique is a key way to get to gain competence, gain skills on how to innovate, to train other people. You can see it's in this picture. We are training here facilitators, let's say literacy teachers who are conducting our approach in the community level. We use all participatory and innovative approaches. One of our approaches that we're using in Mozambique is integrated adult education. The integrated adult education is a combination of the best practice of formal education and non-formal education. We combine also literacy and numeracy and also skills development. It means we are adding literacy and numeracy issues or modules related to agricultural, savings, small business, food and nutrition, climate change, health, and also food processing. For a training framework, we start with selection. We select facilitators for a training, and we conduct the first training with them. And then during the monitoring process, we are on-job training. We're providing on-job trainings, let's say a continuous professional development. We provide also the refresher training and continuous training within. When we meet with the facilitators, we're trying to, we discuss issues, what we observed during a monitoring. So we consider this is a way how we continue training for them. While we defend that there is lifelong learning, not only for the participants. Lifelong learning is also applicable for the facilitators or literacy teachers. This is an example of agricultural module. We're using now the multi-sector approach. We invite not only people from the Ministry of Education, we invite extensionists from agriculture, and then we invite them to train our facilitators and our beneficiaries in the field. Also related to food and nutrition, agro-processing products, we're also trying to introduce this process in a literacy and numerous. It means the participants of our programs not just getting the ideas of literacy and numerous and counting. They can learn how to make agro-processing their products that they are producing in the agriculture, how they can hear the good things, how can they cook. So it reach our diet in one hand, and in the other hand, it produce also, they can sell the cakes, they can sell what they are producing in agro-processing, so they can get some money. This money can save, and after saving, it can use to improve their houses, to buy some more equipment that they need in their lives. There are some challenges. As you know, Mozambique has more than 40 local languages. Our official language is Portuguese. So the cultural diversity in the sessions is a biggest challenge. In the South Mozambique, there are some languages. We are based also in the center, and we are in the center and South Mozambique. So, and also bringing the gap between theory and practice. Some of our facilitators still teaching as teachers. As literacy teachers, not facilitators. For our understanding, the facilitators can promote community development at the end of the day, not just teaching literacy and numeracy. Supporting educators also in adopting innovative approaches, these participatory methods, including the inclusive approaches. It's not easy because they are coming from formal primary schools, formal secondary schools. So trying to introduce new approaches, it's becoming very difficult at the beginning, and then it takes time. We continue advocating them, and also the local authorities of education in the district what we are targeted. And also ensuring equitable access of resources and training, materials, producing local materials using a flat approach. So we need addition, efforts from the participants, from all stakeholders involved in the process. As I mentioned before, the production of local materials, greater demands, basic training knowledge. They are coming with basic knowledge from formal education. So now we are trying to introduce this. This is integrated adult education. It's not literacy. Integrated adult education is more than literacy, because we are not just teaching them learning and writing, but we are introducing new aspects, combining skills development for their community development. High cost ongoing is the country is too big, and also in the district we can't cover all the country for our resources, so it's not easy. And also balancing literacy and community development. How we can compare using literacy and numerous and also community development. We want to see in the all areas where we are in place. We want to see most significant changes. Not just people to say, now I know how to read and write. So if you know how to read and write, what are you going to do more? You can do more. What will you improve? What changes can you see in your life? This is our mandate, to see the most significant change, our impact of our interventions in the community. Here you can see the first picture. This is small garden horticulture in the family garden. They are producing the foods for their nutrition. They can reach their diet and then it can improve their life. And another picture you can see here in the right side, this is a classroom, a literacy class. This is the process of monitoring. We are with local authority of education and the national levels as well as included here in the monitoring process, participatory monitoring. In this picture, we can see the saving process in a literacy cycle. This is, the literacy cycles, the literacy process taking place in this area, and also after the lesson, they save their money that they collect from selling their products, the products that they are coming from agriculture. So this process is a cycle project of learning in integrated adult education. We can see at the cakes, they produce in their own literacy classes these cakes. They sell during the International Literacy Day, where we have the ceremonies, they sell, and they're selling also in the primary schools. They win some money. This money they save the money, and after saving the money, they can improve their lives and also buy bicycle or motorbike for their development. Thank you so much for your attention. We have only 10 minutes. I hope we finished our 10 minutes now. Thanks a lot. Muito obrigado.
Thank you very much for this interesting presentation, and also with lots of photos. I think they're really helpful to understand how you organize the activities on the ground. Really, in professionalizing the adult literacy educators, there's a question always that how we can strike the balance between standardization and diversity, giving the varied profiles of learning content, profiles of adult educators, so learning contents, mode of operation, and working conditions educators. But example really from Mozambique, I think you highlighted the need for respecting linguistic cultural context, supportive pedagogical support, integrating learning and life for application of skills. That was really interesting, and ensuring access to resource and training. So as a result of resource challenges. So thank you so much. So now it's my pleasure to invite Mr. Aliou Fall to share a country experience in national capacity building in Senegal. The floor is yours.
Bonjour à tous.
Good afternoon. I hope you can hear me properly.
Bonjour à tous.
So, good morning, good afternoon. I'm Aliou Fall. I'm a director for literacy and national languages in Senegal at the Ministry for Education. So, in terms of literacy, we have a program, a national program for basic education and adult education. And in this framework, we employ facilitators. So these are education facilitators. And so our literacy educators are called facilitators. And to implement the program, our ministry deems the program, the training of facilitators, to be instrumental. It is a priority. So, to train our facilitators, there are two pillars: initial training and training. So, initial training is managed by the Directorate for Training and Information, and this is done at decentralized level, working with inspectorates and regional centers for training of education professionals. So in terms of initial training, the idea is to provide facilitators with the linguistic and andragogy skills necessary for adult education. As for in-service training, we talk here mainly about refresher courses. These are done on the occasion of class visits. And again, we work with the regional centers for training of education staff, inspectorates. So at academy level and the Inspectorate for Education and Training. So we offer refresher courses, but also group sessions to discuss educational needs of these facilitators. So this is an opportunity to identify their individual needs to see how we can respond to those needs. So we focus on andragogy, on how to manage a class, how to plan a class, how to use various educational resources, and how to encourage active participation. And then at a local level, our territorial organizations play a key role, working with the various stakeholders to ensure monitoring and support of facilitators over time. And so when training in service, to ensure that we meet the needs of facilitators, we take into account a number of factors. So there's the issue of inclusivity. So the target population are young people, adults, women. We have people with specific needs, persons with inmates, blind people. And so that's a reason why there are skill enhancement courses to develop the skills of facilitators to address those various target populations. Then there's empowerment and social and economic inclusion. And the idea is that literacy should contribute to acquiring skills that will help people participate in the job market. So the idea is to provide the facilitators with the skills necessary to teach literacy in conjunction with more general life skills. And the idea is to work to foster the literacy within a working environment. Then there's the issue of social fairness, language diversity, and promotion of national languages. And so facilitators are trained in their mother tongue, and they will use their mother tongue when providing literacy courses. And so this means that the target population will acquire their skills within their own language, and this is a way of promoting and recognizing local languages.
So then you have social professional factors. By rolling out these training opportunities, pre-service and in-service in practical and financial terms. So we also have a system for accreditation, which is currently being approved, and through my directorate for national languages and literacy, we strive to create an environment for what we call the facilitators, then the literacy trainers, which is a supportive environment. And we do, in spite of this, run into a number of challenges on a regular basis, many of which have to do with training. And perhaps I could highlight some of them here. First of all, there is the precarious status of people who work in adult literacy programs and the lack of any recognition of their skills. In other words, these education workers that we call facilitators are not formally part of the national education system, which means that they do not have career development perspectives, and that can be a source of discouragement for them. We should also note that there is no adequate legislative framework that would enable them to become part of the civil service, nor is there enough pedagogical support on a regular basis or enough of a system to assess performance. We have been trying to come up with a number of proposed solutions, and I'd like to mention here a process for a recognition of experience in partnership with UNESCO, so as to provide a channel whereby the prior experience of facilitators can be taken into account as part of recognizing them as professionals. We have also been thinking for some time about creating a specific status for literacy teachers so as to give them better conditions that will be more motivating and provide more stability and attractiveness to this line of work. We also want to make sure that different players involved, whether it's local authorities, NGOs, the state services, or the operators in literacy themselves, can all work in closer coordination to provide support. And of the Ministry of Education, we want to make sure that we can advocate for inclusive, professionalizing literacy work, which is contextualized in the realities in the field in cultural and linguistic terms in Senegal. We want to make sure that we can turn this line of work of literacy training into one which is attractive, stable, and recognized as an essential part of human and economic development in Senegal. Thank you.
And thank you very much, Mr. Fall. Your presentation illustrated the critical importance of strong leadership of the government, how it can make a difference when it's linked with a vision underpinned by lifelong learning perspective, literacy development for multiple purposes, not just economic, but also professional, social, civic, and civic ones, and integrating learners' life and learning. It's great to hear about the continuous training and support for educators, certification systems, enhancing educator status, and the use of mother language. I think that's also very important in the African context. And then maybe taking this opportunity, let me add some words that the literacy program for blind in Senegal, run by the directorate in which of the literacy and national language, in which you will work, won the UNESCO International Literacy Prizes this year. So congratulations again. So let me now go to the next speaker. The next presenter is Mr. Prafula Barman from Bangladesh. There's a bit of time lag from Bangladesh, okay, who will share BRAC's approach to capacity building of literacy educator. Prafula, the floor is yours.
Okay, thank you. So I think need to share my presentation. Okay. So hello from Bangladesh. Good afternoon, good evening, and good morning. I am representing BRAC. BRAC is a non-government organization established in 1972. We have been operating a lot of program in country Bangladesh as well as 13 Asian countries. So a lot of intervention for the solution of approaches for social development, social enterprise, and humanitarian response. So BRAC education program also started from 1973. So today's my presentation is BRAC approaches to literacy educators capacity building. I am focusing my presentation completely on how we build the capacity of the educators and how we build their empowerment in the society. Next slide, please. Next slide, please. Okay. The main objective is to build the capacity and build the environment so that they can empower in the society. Next slide, please. The approach of our capacity building is always it is interactive and community-based selection process. It is important because we do not circulate for their recruitment. We survey the educator within the community. So capacity building is started from selection process through interaction. There is a continuous professional development I will discuss in later slide. We also follow collaboration and peer learning. There is a mentorship and coaching. We emphasize more on practice teaching in the center before and after foundation training. The use on the job training, there is a supportive supervision I also discussed later on. We there is a highly linked with the community. So there is a opportunity for the educators to learn from the community. On activities through different types of experiential learning. So next slide, please. Next slide, please. There are different types of models we operated. Here I mentioned only 3 models. One model is basic education for older and adolescent, the age group 8 to 18 years. Another is 15 to 35 years, and another one adolescent development club and life skills. So they are for 11 to 18 years old. You know, in Bangladesh, there is more than 1 million Rohingya people forcefully transferred. So we have also program for them. So there are also major 3 intervention we are running here. One is community-based learning facility, another one accelerated learning package, and also functional literacy and numeracy. Next slide, please. So who are they? The selection criteria of the educators are, in past, when literacy rate was very low, so we only selected 9 years of schooling. Then currently we selected the higher secondary school certificate pass. 99% of them are female. I already mentioned there is recruited from community. They have to must highly acceptance in the community. We prefer the who have experience or who have graduated from BRAC interventions. A lot of teachers now from our BRAC intervention. They have to willingness to work with the marginalized community. There are flexibility in selection in remote locations and who have experience. Please, the next slide. Here I mentioned only the duration of the training and the package of the capacity development. The one is foundational training after selecting the teacher. Then we have practice teaching 1 week in school or in adult literacy center or life skill center. Then they need to 3 days training for managing personal disability and pedagogy. Also training for life skills, child protection, and safeguarding. We started LMS, learning online learning management system. So they 2 days orientation for them. We have portal, online portal. So teacher they through online system, and this is we call self-learning. We have on-the-job training, what is once in a week. I will discuss later on that. We have monthly refresher training. Also in each month, 1 or 2 days monthly refresher training. Specifically the last one for the Rohingya community educator. So there are 2 months total course. In education sector, we have assigned all the educator for all the organizations. So we during these 2 months, 2 weeks is face-to-face session, and another 6 weeks of self-learning, guided learning, mentoring support, and peer reflection and online session. Next slide, please. Here the pedagogy of the andragogy of the main course of different types of course, what I mentioned before. The 5 major things we include in the module. One is facilitator's role or educator's role, what they have to follow in the classroom. So these 5 area: active learner involvement, positive relationship with the learner, opportunity to add new ideas, have opportunity to engaging them into thinking process. Classroom management, which is very important for regular attendance of the learner. So for that, teacher, educator play a role through different types of co-curricular activities. There is also parents-teacher monthly meetings. So and also educator visit learners' home. In the module, 20% we kept theoretical, another 80% is practical. There is the assessment, which is PTS posted, and there observation and ongoing assessment is happening through project activities, through different types of taxes, what we, the facilitator provide for them. The important things is like the methods. We follow the active learning method, like think, pair, share, roundtable, running dictation, so on. There are a lot of project work so that they can learn practically. Also field trip. I already mentioned a lot of field trip so that they can learn from the community. Also, we invited guests. So on a specific topic, guests can discuss something and there is a question answer session. There are a lot of peer and group learning, and play, debate, music, and drama also are there. So next slide, please. So some here we have best practices. I already mentioned the local and community-led recruitment. So there is a lot of interaction within the community people and the learner. The lot of like effort of capacity building take place here. There is a continuous professional building through monthly refresher training. I brief here like the educator and the facilitator, both what they faced observed in the last month. So they collected those problems and issues, and also they planned for the next month what content they need to deliver in the class. So both those things they included in the module, and in the monthly 1 or 2 days facilitate those things. There is a lot of group work, peer work, and also the best educator who are in that batch, those batches. So they also take part to facilitate those kinds of experience thing, what they learn, what they face problem in the last month. In our case, the educator in the community, they have highly acceptance and they act as an ambassador in the community. Like all the people from the community, they come to our educator for different types of advices regarding education, not only for this specific center, they also ask or advise for her to their children or education regarding different types of advice from them. Of training, which is also important through supportive supervision. We have the 10 or 15 center, there is one educator supervisor. So these she or he supervised, visited the center 1 or 2 times in a week. And what they do, they sometimes take part in practice teaching in the class. Sometimes they observe the classroom. They identify the issues, the problems. Then they together, facilitator and educator, both they take part for the solution. So this is kind of on-the-job training by which educator empowered and also capacitated. There is a monthly parents meeting. Educator, she conducted the parents meeting. So each month, all parents come to the center and a lot of discussion happened regarding the school problem issues, and there are also they solve the problems. Next slide, please. Please, next slide. Here the significant impacts and outcome. Since 1985, more than 300,000 educators we train. Among them, more than 4,000 from Rohingya community. These educators by lot of centers graduated more than 9 million participants from our different types of intervention. So these educators worked for these 9 million participants. 99% of them graduated from this center. Among them, 60% women and girls, near 2% from the ethnic community and person with disability. 60,000 from the Rohingya community. A number of educators deployed as the educator supervisor and managers in our program. Currently, we have one study, research study on teachers, on educators. So we found there's an increase of empowerment through economic independence and economic decision making, self-esteem and self-efficiency, freedom of movement, resilience and adaptability, and household decision making. I already mentioned that they act as a social ambassador in the community. A lot of our graduates who educated from our different intervention, now they are employment in different sectors, private as well as government. So next slide, please. Finally, there is some challenges and learnings we have. More or less, I think in all over the world, for educators, there are a problem like there is a less scope of professional development, limitation of career opportunities and advancement. Although we try to implement them or promoted them in different way, still there is a lot of challenges in this section. There is kinds of fear of joblessness, like sometimes the project or the center are closed. So this is happening also. but at the same time, there are a lot of enjoyment in teaching. They have because these profession respectful profession in the community. So that way they develop their motivation in the community, so they retain, and also their these great acceptance also support them to success in their works. Thank you. This is from me. If any question, then I can answer. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Mr. Varman. Your presentation illustrated the effectiveness of embedding interventions for educationally marginalized children and youth in a community context, and such as community-based recruitment and regular dialogue between educators, parents. And it was also interesting to hear how you have addressed some challenges related to educators' status. Education ambassador in the community is a very interesting idea. And then also, of course, remaining challenges. And then this could be inspirational for many other initiatives, but also will be also for collective reflection. It looks like many programs are facing the similar challenges, really. So now I'm pleased to invite the last presenter, Mr. Timothy Dennis Ireland, who has promoted other education at the local, country, and international levels as a scholar, practitioner, and also policymaker. And really, he will share the insights of applied research on literacy educators' professionalization. So the floor is yours, Timothy.
Good morning to you all. Good morning. Thank you, Maddie. Thank you, Sophia. It's a great pleasure to be here. I'm talking to you from the northeast of Brazil, where it's 10 o'clock in the morning. And as Maddie said, just so I explain the strategy for my presentation, I worked both as an academic and as a researcher, but also as a practitioner. I coordinated a literacy project for building workers for about 20 years. I was a policymaker. I was responsible for the Brazilian literate program in the Ministry of Education. And now I'm part of the coordinating team for an in-service training program for all adult literacy workers in Brazil. So that's just the background so you understand from where I'm talking. And I want to start with what I call a hypothesis. My hypothesis is that there exists a strong correlation between the concept or the praxis of literacy and its implementation and the status of literacy workers. Therefore, how we think about literacy and the status which we give to those who work as literacy educators. And as I said, I want to use the case of Brazil, the last 60 years, more or less since 1960, as evidence to illustrate three different political responses to the literacy challenge. If you could, the next slide, please. And the next one. And the next one, please. And so in order to understand literacy, I think we need to, when we're talking about implementing literacy policy, we have to have very clear for ourselves what is literacy? How do we understand literacy? And the first thing I would say, the right to education cannot be reduced to the right to basic literacy. Education is much more than literacy, and literacy is just the first phase. And as a right, governments have the lead responsibility in meeting the right to adult in terms of policy, in terms of finance, in terms of leadership must come from the government. Everybody has the right to learn, has the right to education. And I think the recommendation on adult learning and education, or RALI, which was approved in 2015 for UNESCO, gives a very clear idea of how we should understand literacy. And it says that literacy is a key component of adult learning and education. It involves a continuum of learning and proficiency levels, which allows citizens to engage in lifelong learning and participate fully in community, workplace, and wider society. It includes the ability to read and write, to identify, understand, interpret, create, communicate, and compute using printed and written materials, as well as the ability to solve problems in an increasingly technological and information-rich environment. I think that's fundamentally a question of digital inclusion as part of how we understand literacy. The next slide, please. And I think there was a benchmark which was approved in 2016, the International Benchmark on Adult Literacy, which was based on a survey carried out in about 31 countries by GCE and ActionAid International. And I think the way it explains literacy is fundamental for our action within the literacy field. It says that literacy should be seen as a continuous process. It's not just a one-off. It requires sustained learning and application, and there are no magic lines to cross from illiteracy into literacy. We don't go to bed at night being illiterate and wake up the next day being literate. It's a process that takes time. And the last general question that I would like to say is that it's important not to reduce literacy to a purely pedagogical challenge. Illiteracy is one dimension of inequality, and therefore oral approaches. It's very much associated with those on low incomes, those in poverty, those living in poor housing conditions, etc. And therefore, we need to address all the challenges and not just think that making people literate is going to solve the problems of their inequality. Next slide, please. Just so you have an idea, when I'm talking about Brazil in 2025 has a population of 213 million. It's an enormous country, 8.5 million square kilometers. A lot of people think that Brazil has one language, Portuguese, not Spanish. But there also are 295 languages and 391 different ethnic or indigenous groups. So the question of literacy is principally a question of literacy in Portuguese, but it has to pay attention and to give the right of those who do not speak Portuguese the right to learn in their own language. Yeah? Overall, the number of people who don't know to read and write in Brazil, just over 9 million, that's 5.3% of the population, which has slowly been coming down, but 9 million is still a lot of people. And perhaps more worrying than the number of people who don't know how to read and write, the number of people who haven't concluded basic education. There are 68 million Brazilians who haven't concluded there are 9 years of primary, 3 years of secondary education. So within Brazil, the right of all citizens to education was established in the federal constitution in 1988, which was then regulated by the national guidelines on education. And that established what we call youth and adult education as a modality of regular basic education. In other words, adult education in general in Brazil, when we speak about youth and adult education, we're talking about second chance education or compensatory education for those over the age of 15. So it is, whereas youth and adult education in the majority of countries is non-formal, in Brazil, this type of adult and youth education is specifically formal education. But when youth and adult education was established as a public policy, there was no provision made for the training of teachers who work in the field of adult education. We have a policy, we established youth and adult education as a modality of basic education, but at the same time, there was no policy established in order for people who work in this field to prepare themselves specifically. And there's also a very ambiguous relationship between literacy and youth and adult education. How is literacy something different, or is it in fact a part of youth and adult education? In other words, we will see there are three distinct political responses to how you see this relationship in recent Brazilian history. And these three different phases reflect very much how the literacy worker is seen. What is his status? What are his working conditions? What is his access to professionalization? And the first, I think, is it's very much how literacy is seen in a large number of countries as a standalone emergency short-term action. Literacy campaigns, literacy projects generally are short-term. There's 6 months at the most, or 8 months, or at the very most a year. And that was very much the case in Brazil with Mobral, then later in the 90s with another program. And within that context, literacy educators were volunteers, they weren't professionals, they received a small payment, and they received a training which was insufficient. They were supposed to be given an initial short training, and they should, during their time, have in-service training, but whether they did, I think it's the first form a political response to illiteracy, to establish literacy projects, a short term. The next approach of response is a sort of hybrid response. In 2003, the Brazilian government set up the Brazil Literate Program, which was the responsibility of the Ministry of Education, but at the same time, it was not specifically articulated with the youth and adult education. And again, literacy workers were volunteers. Generally, they should have concluded their secondary education. They had received some sort of basic financial incentive and some kind of initial and continuous training, but insufficient for the kind of work and the kind of literacy that we now begin to feel is necessary for citizens in Brazil or in most other countries. And finally, this is the third political response, which is in action at the moment, so it's very difficult to evaluate. But in 2024, the Brazilian government established the National Pact for Overcoming Illiteracy and Qualifying Adult Education. And this is a continuous in-service training for literacy and adult education. That is one of the structural pillars of the National Pact. One of the most important elements of the National Pact is training those who are working in literacy and adult education for their specific function. And as they are teachers who are working in adult education, they are qualified teachers. They are qualified to teach children, but they also now, as part of the National Pact, they receive in-service training as part of their formation, both at a local level. That will be a face-to-face weekly meeting, and they also take part in online in-service training, for which at the end they will receive, if they conclude it successfully, they will receive a certificate. The next slide, please. And so what lessons can we learn from specifically the two first periods, the period in which literacy was seen as a one-off emergency, and the second in which literacy was treated by the Ministry of Education, but still separate from adult and youth education. The first is that literacy, whether we want it to be or not, literacy continues to be a political minefield. It is always manipulated for political ends. Second lesson to be learned is there is no quick solution for literacy. There is no way of, in 6 weeks, 6 months, to make people literate. Literacy is a continuous, a process. The analysis of all this data, especially the two first approaches to literacy, is that the lack of qualified teachers was one of the shortcomings of the program. The teachers were all volunteers who received very little formal education and very low, it's not even salaries, because they didn't have formal links with any institution. They received payments, monthly payments for their work. And I think more worrying even still is that data showed that less than 10% of those who successfully concluded the Brazil Literate program went on to continue studying adult education. In other words, they 90% finished the Literate Brazil program and did not continue their education. In other words, they were probably candidates to become illiterate yet again after a period of time. Next slide, please. And so we come to how at present the Brazilian government is attempting to face the challenge of making those who work in literacy and adult education qualified and at the same time have working conditions in order to be able to carry out their job in a specific way. First point is that the understanding of literacy as a continuous process. It requires qualified, properly paid teachers who have a career path, who are professional adult educators. Secondly, as a corollary of this, the recognition that literacy must be understood as an initial phase, but as an initial phase of continuing education. You begin to learn how to read and write as part of primary education, and during the course of primary education, you become a fully literate person. And for that reason, literacy must be assumed by schools, by the youth and adult education schools, which are specifically for this population. There are two other questions. The penultimate question is, we need to understand that the contents of literacy must respond to the learning demands, both of the students. Obviously, the students know what they want to learn and they have their own demands. And so we can never frustrate them by not satisfying those demands. But at the same time, we have to take into account the demands of society. Obviously, when we think about literacy, we're thinking about
It looks like there's a disconnection. Can you hear us? Hear me, Timothy? There seems to be a technical issue here.
Yes, there is technical issue, I think. We can't hear him. Yeah.
Vous m'entendez?
Okay.
Vous m'entendez, James?
Can you hear me?
Oui.
Oui, donc le problème, il vient pas de chez nous, puisque nous, on est...
Well, so the problem is not from the technical end at UNESCO, and we are connected remotely from Singapore.
Okay, so hope that he can join us to finish the presentation. I think it's almost at the end. Perhaps, while waiting, we have questions from the participants. So maybe, my colleague Antoine can introduce a question, and then maybe we could start the Q&A. Antoine?
Yes. So there is one question in the chat for Mr. Fall. Let me write it. Où en êtes-vous dans le processus de VAE des animateurs?
Where do you stand in the recognition of prior experience for the so-called facilitators? Do you have any specific data? And could you also tell us separately more about what you meant when you talked about a specific status? Mr. Fall, over to you. Well, thank you, Antoine. And hello, by the way. When we talk about a specific status for literacy workers, really what we have in mind is professionalization so that they can have professional career development perspectives and become part of the civil service. Because as things currently stand, there is we can offer them any such prospects and enable them to be civil servants too and have a decent income, which means that they are forced to live with very precarious and very low income. So that's really the idea, is to have a piece of paper, a kind of a certificate that would enable them to become part of the civil service. Well, thank you very much. There was a second question for you, Mr. Fall. Despite all of the efforts that the DANL has been making, would it not be a good idea for it to take advantage of all the efforts that have been contributed by other players in civil society? Well, actually, I addressed that partly in the Q&A in writing. And believe me, we do not have an exclusive attitude, but by any means in our approach in all of our activities, we encourage civil society and all parties, all players to engage with us. It could be at different levels, regionally, locally. It could be the inspectorates at different levels for general education or for adult education, so that we can have as much data, as many inputs as possible, and strive to improve our work. Because our work is not, of course, limited to this directorate, the DANL. We are eager to address the needs of all the players as part of rolling out this program. Thank you very much. There is actually a third question I was just starting to respond to in writing. It was about literacy players in Senegal. Should they not have the ability to take part in the design of curricula and in making things more sustainable? So the DANL that I had is in charge of coordination at the central level, but then there is a role for coordination in the inspectorates for either general education or adult education as well. And we feel that it is very important to ensure that everyone can participate and that this spirit can enable us to feed into a program that would be an inspiration to all. It's not something that we've really done experimentally yet, but we do feel that the players concerned are much more in touch with local realities, and that would be a very interesting thing to pursue. I would like to thank those who made the suggestion. We should definitely strive to do that for the next stage of our program. Thank you. I think those were the only questions addressed to me, but please don't hesitate to give me the floor again if the need arises. I'll be happy to answer them.
Thank you. Thank you very much. I think there are a couple of questions addressed to other speakers and also a generic question about, for instance, multi-grade learning, teaching and learning. Don't know if other speakers would like to respond to any questions. You're welcome to speak. Otherwise, I just wonder if Mr. Timothy Ireland, if you are back or not. Are you back or not?
Yes,
it looks
I'm
like
back.
Yeah, okay, good.
Okay.
Would you like to conclude your presentation or just...
I do apologize. This is just another example of how technology both helps and hinders. No, I was just almost concluding. I just had one more point, and I was saying that literacy has to be understood as language acquisition, as numeracy, but also as digital inclusion. And I think, ecological literacy is a fundamental part of how we think of how the insertion of people in the world today. If we are going to avoid, we're going to combat climate change, if we're going to educate people in a new way, a new relation with the natural world, that must start in the literacy process as well. And that, I think, reflects upon the complexities when we're talking about how we train adult educators and literacy workers. There is the idea that anybody can teach literacy to our students is nonsense, basically. I mean, it is increasingly complex. You both have to understand literacy and how adults learn, and you also need to have a reasonable understanding of the digital world and of the major challenges facing humanity at the moment. So I think this complexity, when we think about adult education, think of those who are especially in the first years of adult education working with literacy, they need to have a very solid initial training, and they also need this in-service or continuous training to maintain them both up to date with the latest information, but also so that they can exchange opinions, they exchange experiences with other people. I think adult educators learn obviously from courses, but they also learn an awful lot from exchanging experiences with colleagues. And just the last thing we would say that literacy remains, I think it has to be clear that it is not, it is an activity which obviously the civil society can and should take part, but the ultimate responsibility for both organizing, for having a policy of literacy, for financing and implementing national policy remains with the government. But right to education is the responsibility of the government, and literacy is a very small part of the right to education, but it is an extremely important part. And so both, making sure that those working with literacy have the training, they have the funding, they have the working conditions, those are all essential, and that must be part of the government responsibility. So this is the part, and on the basis of my experience in Brazil, but not only in Brazil, in other countries in Latin America and other parts of the world as well, I think there is no way that adult literacy can continue to be worked as an emergence, as a short-term campaign that supposedly will contribute to be a continuous, consistent, well thought out policy with financing.
Thank you so much. A lot of powerful messages. I think we are almost reaching the end time, actually. So I hope that you have enjoyed this session. Maybe before closing this session, let me just situate today's insightful presentation dialogue within the evolving global context, where we can actually observe a gradual shift in discourse and focus from teachers at school to educators for lifelong learning. As you may recall that earlier this year in August, the World Summit on Teachers was organized by UNESCO in collaboration with the government of Chile in conjunction with the SDG 4 High-Level Steering Committee Leaders Meeting. And this summit served as landmark forum calling to elevate, support, invest in teaching professions at a time of global urgency. I should highlight in particular a lifelong learning perspective that underpinned the summit discussions, as well the outcome document, Santiago Consensus, which will be a moral compass for our collecting efforts for educators, and recognize the state's obligation to respect, to protect, to fulfill the right to education. The Santiago Consensus clearly states that their duties extend across entire life course, so from early childhood through adulthood. So Santiago Consensus also urges national governments and partners to promote teacher education and professional development, recognizing educators in multiple modalities and areas, including adult learning. And currently, actually, the 43rd session of the UNESCO General Conference, the highest decision-making body of UNESCO, is being held in Samarkand, Uzbekistan, and teacher is high on the agenda. I'm pleased to say that. And drawing from the discussion held at the World Summit, United Nations Secretary General's high-level panel on teaching profession, it was decided just a few days ago to proceed with a review of the two normative instruments regarding the state of teachers, adapting lifelong learning perspective as a guiding principle. So there are the 1966 ILO UNESCO recommendation concerning the state of teachers, and then 1997 UNESCO recommendation concerning the state of higher education teaching personnel. So this is worthy of attention as the current instrument, which are the only global standards regarding the status of teachers, could be enhanced to address the status of other educators more prominently. So these changes that together with the other existing instrument and platforms, such as the 2015 recommendation, the Learning Education Marrakesh Framework Action, are expected to have a longer-term effect on policy making and practices on the ground. However, of course, these changes at the global level are still distant from realities of numerous adult literacy educators on the ground. So there's much to be done, and as it takes time. But it is achievable as exemplified by the Brazilian policy responses evolution. So to harness the potential of that adult literacy educators for creating more just, peaceful, and sustainable societies, we need to join hands and then connecting the dots within the lifelong learning ecosystem. So connecting teaching, learning, practice, policies, and research, connecting learning in non-formal, formal, informal settings, connecting the adult literacy, adult education, other areas such as Tibet, ECCE, environmental education, connecting different stakeholders, government, important the responsible entity, but of course the other partners, civil society organizations, researchers, private sector, communities, and connecting actions at different levels, so global, country level, local levels. So I hope this webinar helped you make some of these connections and then through dialogue and peer learning. So let me thank again the distinguished speakers for sharing your invaluable knowledge and insights, and the participant for your engagement. So thank you very much. Sophia, floor is back to you.
Thank you, Mari. Actually, we'd love to continue this discussion, but unfortunately, we have to conclude. I would just like to thank all the speakers and our partners and our colleagues at UNESCO HQ, our partner DVV International, but also our co-organizer ASPBAE for their support today, and all the participants that were here and they contributed to the discussion. We have still some questions on the chat. Write to us. Our speakers can continue the discussion via email with you. The recording will be available on YouTube right after this webinar, this event. And the presentations also could be shared with you upon your request. So please write to us at GAL Secretariat and we can share with you the slides of our speakers. So once again, thanks a lot. We conclude this series of the GAL thematic webinars with this webinar today. We will continue then next year with a new series with new topics. So please feel free to contact us and share your thoughts about any topic that you would be interested in to organize a webinar within GAL and inviting also non-GAL countries to contribute to the discussion. So thanks a lot and have a nice day.
Thank you. Thank you. Bye.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Merci à vous aussi.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.
Bye.
Thank you. Bye-bye.